One. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Lake Norman Chamber's Family First Coronavirus Response Act and the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. I'm Bill Russell, President of Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce, and today we have Jay Lesemann. Jay is a former board chair. He is a CPA in Huntersville, North Carolina, and he will be guiding us through this presentation. We also have Douglas Marion here, who is the treasurer of the Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce. And if you have any questions today, either instant chat, use your chat on Zoom, and we'll try to get to them. Also, you can email them to russell@lakenormanchamber.org. That's RUSSELL at lakenormanchamber.org. If we don't get to your question, we'll be sure to include it in an email that we send out later today. This presentation will be recorded, and it will be emailed to the Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce members, and will be also put on our social media, Twitter and Facebook later on this afternoon. Again, I welcome everybody, and Jay, it's your show.
Thank you very much, Bill. I appreciate it. And if everybody could just confirm that you are able to hear what we're saying, maybe if you can open up the instant chat and just type "hearing great," "can't hear," "ears are clogged," "sorry," or something, and that way we just kind of know, make sure we don't have problems from the beginning. Sounds good, hearing fine, thanks, great. I appreciate it. Okay, this is something that is changing. It's probably already changed 4 or 5 times since we started, 30 seconds ago. And I was up to, things were changing yesterday, and some of you online with us right now are in the financial or with financial institutions, and you know better than anybody that things are changing every day as far as whether or not you're able, how these loan packages are going to be structured, how we're helping, how the government's going to be helping everybody, and what have you. So let's just go ahead and get started. Some of this may be boring to some, but trust me, we'll get through it. And then hopefully we can have some time for Q&A afterwards. If not, we'll be able to reply after this is over. We have about 1 hour to get through everything, and I'm going to try to have a hard stop at around 9:40, 9:45 to leave us some time just in case. So what we want to go through today, okay, and Douglas, there we go. I want to do a little intro of myself, which I think Bill's already done, do a little historical update, kind of cover what Congress has been doing this past month or so, and then we'll get into the meat of the 2 acts that are becoming near and dear to every business person's heart and maybe pocketbook. So let's go on to the first slide. That was just a brief on me, which you can see, and Bill's already talked about. We'll continue. Disclaimers, this is only as good as the information we have. And so, please, if something's in here that's not correct, let me know. And if I don't know the answer, if you know it's incorrect, but don't know the answer yourself, then please let me know and we can find it out, or you can tell me if you know what the answer is. The COVID-19 impact, it's hard to believe it's been just 2 or 3 months since all this started. And, if you kind of look through here, this is the first, you have to forgive me because I'm trying to move the camera away from where my screen is sharing. There we go. Look at what all happened and this is not really financial related, but what happened, how we got to where we are. These are just, I could have taken, 5 or 6 slides and continued to do benchmarks and timelines of everything that's gone on. But you'll see, after this goes through February the 26th, and we continue. March 3rd, February 29th, the U.S. had their first death. And, their sports events starting to close. The market started tanking. I believe that was in February. the end of February when we had our first down day in the stock market. And now it's like, it doesn't really phase us much because we expect, well, if it goes down today, it goes back up tomorrow. So, but hard to believe that what all we've been through these past 2 or 3 months, if you think about everything that's occurred and think about all the changes that we've just put in our lives to compensate for this pandemic that we're currently under. Okay, congressional action. You know, just kind of like the COVID-19 virus itself hitting us, who would have thought that we could get as much out of our Senate and House of Representatives as we have? And there's always going to be bickering and fighting, we know. But what we do know is, you know, they have come through and they have at least provided us something to help keeping the economy going, to help the, you know, businesses go, to help individuals, employees as well as employers, doing everything they can to help them get through this crisis. On March 18th, one of the first big acts that was passed was the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. And that became effective yesterday on April Fool's Day. And there are two main provisions in here. You'll learn that there are lots of provisions, lots of acts within acts. And the two main acts or provisions within Families First Act was the Emergency Family and Medical Leave Expansion Act and the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act. In essence, what these two are doing is they're protecting the worker to make sure they will continue to get paid if they have to take off for, you know, taking care of children because schools are closed, or taking care of a family member because he or she is sick with this virus, or being, you know, told they have symptoms of this virus, or they themselves have gotten sick. So this was the, you know, kind of the doorway of what opened up and soon became a much larger stimulus package. In fact, I believe it was $2.1 or $2 trillion that the Coronavirus Aid, Relief and Economic Security Act was passed, and that was on March 27th, and they call it the CARES Act. There are lots of provisions in here for individuals as well as businesses. What we're going to touch on today, because this is a Chamber of Commerce webinar, is we're going to touch on the ones that really affect the businesses and how they operate. I have got lots more information on these other items, so if you want to know more about that, again, please email me or call me later today or next week. So we'll touch on these two items here under the Families First, the number 1 and 2, and then we'll also going to go over number 1, number 3, and number 7, which are the you've heard about the Payroll Protection Program and the Economic Income Disaster Loan Program. So those are the two we're going to talk about mainly. But let's move on to the next slide. And Provision 1, the Emergency Family and Medical Leave Expansion Act under Families First Coronavirus Response Act. What it did was, in essence, it used to be that for those that are in larger corporations that have family medical leave, you're allowed to take time off, and you know, your position is protected. For some, it may even be paid time off. Well, smaller businesses were not required to do that for obvious reasons, but they decided we need to protect workers at all levels, not just in big corporations. So they reduced the number. They said, okay, this Family Medical Leave Act is now the Emergency Family Medical Leave Act. And it's going to, this is addressing the number for businesses that have employees under 500. It expires at the end of this year. And what it offers is it grants people that need to take medical leave, it gives them 10 weeks of paid medical leave. There's a 12-week period. The first 2 weeks are not paid. So if there's other benefits that you have as an employee, you can take those, or you're supposed to be allowed to take those during that 2-week period or 10-day period while you're waiting for the Family Medical Leave Act payments to kick in. Now, from an employer's perspective, you know, you start thinking, well, how am I going to pay for this? And we're going to get to this, but you're going to be covered under some other grants, loans, and deferments. And it's really, it's kind of scary on how they do it, but it seems to work. I've done the calculations a few times, and it works. So we'll get to that in just a minute. But as far as those that can take the leave, as I said, the first 2 weeks of, or you know, normal 12-week FMLA time period that the larger corporations have is unpaid, and you can use sick leave if you have those benefits, or vacation for weeks 1 and 2. Who's eligible? Okay, as an employee, you have to be eligible for you have to have been employed there 30 days. If you just started, this is not going to protect you at all because you're still probably considered a temporary employee. But for those that have been there 30 days or more, they are eligible to receive this emergency FMLA payment. And really, it's a payment that you'll be making, you the employer, but you are reimbursed almost immediately by the government. You can use it to take care if you have children and you know, you've got to take care of, as well as somebody that's sick. And here's the thing to also remember, that if someone can telecommute from home, they are not covered under the FMLA, the Emergency Family Medical Leave Act, because they're still considered working for the employer. So that's the key to remember. Also, and I've tried to come in here and bold where we have employers versus employees, so you know who they affect, because all the words start running together after a while. The employer, you must offer unpaid leave or accrued paid leave for the first 10 days. In other words, if you have other benefit packages that you have available to your employees, they can take that for the first 2 weeks, and you cannot say, no, you can't. So that's something to remember. Also, I'm sorry, I just had a senior moment here. Let me move that right there. There we go. Due to the COVID-19 crisis, the healthcare emergency response organizations may exclude employees. If you are a healthcare agency or healthcare company, or you provide emergency support, you are allowed to exclude people from this act. I don't understand why. I guess because they want to make sure that everybody that's in healthcare is available. But you are allowed to exclude and not implement. You can choose to do so, but you can also choose not to do so. Now, how are the employees going to be paid? The first 10 days, of course, is other pay. So we're going to skip to day 11, and that's when the Emergency Family Leave Act starts, as far as the day count. Employees are paid, and this is key, it's at 2/3 of their regular rate. So if I'm paid $1,000 a week, I'm now going to get paid $666 a week. But we're limited to $200 a day. So you have to go through the calculations of $1,000 times 2/3, but divide that and then divide by 5. So, you know, it kind of gets a little complicated, but payroll companies, most of you all use payroll companies or even payroll with QuickBooks. There are calculators and there are programs that they have built or are building to help you get through this confusion. But in total, what you've got is you've got 2/3 of their regular rate, up to $200 max a day, which would be 200 times 5, that's $1,000 a day, a week. And then you're allowed to do this for 10 weeks. So the most you can ever be paying an employee would be $10,000 for this Emergency Family Leave Act over a 10-week period. There are exemptions that may apply, as we've talked about, for 50 employees or for people that have less than 50 employees. The biggest exemption available for the employer is that you have got to be able to provide and prove that if you let this person go home, your business would suffer. And I don't know how you can do that. I don't, of course, there's no help yet because no one's really filed those exemptions yet. But that's the verbiage that we have, is that the employer must prove that providing leave would risk the employer going out of business. So key employees that you just can't do without. Also, employers with 25 or fewer employees, as opposed to other family leave acts that are in place right now, you are not required to reinstate that person once the 10-week period is over. So the job is not protected. That's another key thing to know, and employees need to know that as well. Okay, how are the employers reimbursed? And this is key, and because, so far all we've heard about is what's coming to the employee, what the employer is saying, whoa, I don't have cash right now as it is. How am I going to pay my people to go and to take Family Leave Act? Well, you're going to get it through credits, through your quarterly payroll tax deposits, and you're going to be able to not only credits through the tax deposits, but you're going to be able to use your employees' withholdings to help you get through the tough times. You're able to use employees' money to help pay your bills, in essence, is what we're talking about. And, right here, if you can use employee withholdings. If it's not enough to cover what you need, then you can file, there's a form, and I've got a link here that if you download these slides, you'll be able to see the link. But they just completed it, I believe, yesterday or 2 days ago. And you can get an advance payment on your employer credits. So they're trying to do everything possible to keep workers paid, and at the same time, make sure the employer has the money available to pay people for this. There is also an excellent link, and I usually don't say this about the IRS, but there is a very good link available on the IRS's website, and you'll see the link right here I have. If you download the slides, you will see this link as well, or you can just Google or search the FAQs for the Emergency Family Leave Act credit explanations. Okay, so that's the first, the Emergency Family Medical Leave Expansion Act. Now, we go to the second provision. The second provision is more for kind of the employees, more so than employees and employers. It just lets you know what you can take leave for and what you are, if you're unable to work, whether it be in-house or telecommute, and you're unable to work because of various reasons related to the COVID virus. And that's key. You can't be other reasons, but if your school is closed, or if have a parent that's sick, or a child that gets sick from this virus, not from something else, but from the virus, you are able to be paid under the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act. Kind of the same calculations. Again, this is kind of falling on the employer to do these calculations, but it's going to be offered through 2020 at the end of the year, similar to the first one, and it must be offered in addition to any existing sick leave and or paid time off that's already in place. So if you offer 2 weeks of PTO, Mr. and Miss Employer, you then still have to offer this. It's not you can do this or that, but you can't do both. So that will give them a little more time again to cover their time off needed and still be paid. How are the employees going to be paid during this time? Well, how much and what are the caps? The employee, if they qualify under the first 3 provisions. And those 3 provisions are, quarantine, been advised to self-quarantine, or experiencing symptoms and seeking medical diagnosis. Those 3 items are paid under this first bullet point here, and it's at their regular rate and capped at $511 a day for a total of $5,110, which there's the math right there, 511 times 10 days. So this is just a 10-day period is all it is. It's not for 10 or 12 weeks like the first act was. Employee qualifies for if they qualify under the second 3 provisions, they got to care for a family member, or they're caring for a child, or they're experiencing substantially similar conditions as specified by Secretary of Health and Human Services. They will be paid at this rate. They will be paid at 2/3 of their regular rate, capped at $200 a day. Okay, that's a big difference from $511 a day to $200 a day. So the category or the bullet that an employee wants to leave under is key. And again, this is falling on the employer to manage, and it's not going to, I don't know what currently businesses are, what a lot of businesses are going through, except for my own and my clients' businesses. But, it's just going to be an added burden to try to keep up with all of this, but it's something that we're all having to do. To qualify, full-time employees can receive up to 80 hours of paid sick leave, and which is, of course, 10 days. And employees can receive pay, and part-time employees, I'm sorry, if you're a part-time employee, you get get paid based on a average 2-week period. So part-timers are included in this as well, not just full-timers. And I believe the part-time calculation starts at those that are under 30 hours per week. So it's, and those that are in HR and know that better, can probably provide a better answer than what I just did. But that's my understanding, is if less than 30 hours, you're considered part-time. More than 30, you're considered full-time. Exemptions again apply for 50 employees or less, which we covered under the first provision. It's exactly the same provision for this act as well. How the employer is reimbursed, exactly the same way as we talked about in the first provision. On your 941, you receive credits on your payroll tax reports. You are able to use the employee withholdings to help fill in the gaps while you're waiting in other words, you're not having to put out once you've paid an employee, what you use in withholdings for the employee that you would normally have to submit to the government, you're able to use. And you're able to use that. In fact, we'll come to it in a little bit. You've got like 2 years to kind of pay this back. So that's going to be a tricky ordeal on trying to keep up with how do you keep up with whose money is whose? So I don't know if they've come up with that right answer yet. But just being aware of that, you can use the money that you withhold, that you they call it trust money. And you're entrusted withholding the money of your employees and passing it on to the government. Well, they're allowing you to hold it and keep holding it if you need to for the short future. So just keep that in mind. That is how this is done. And if we had questions, there'd probably be some right now. I don't see anything on chat, so I guess that's good. I guess everybody's so overwhelmed right now, we just don't know. Okay, Paycheck Protection Program. The second biggest act that was put into place was done on, I believe we said March 27th or signed March 28th. And that was the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, or called the CARES Act. And there are 9-10 provisions in here, of which we're going to really just touch on 2 main ones and then a few other ones as well. but we're just touching the ones that are affecting businesses. So there's some downloads I provided that have more information than just what's related to the business that I think Bill will be sending out later today. Okay, Paycheck Protection Program, which everybody's been hearing about. Paycheck Protection Program is a $350 billion package. Terms are the same for everybody, whether you're, or 450 employees or 2 employees, the method to the madness is still the same. You can use the loan proceeds to cover 8 weeks of payroll cost, including all the benefits, mortgage interest, rent, utility costs. Before I go any further, our landlord has asked us if we will, because they have our landlord has given us some waivers on rent for the next few months. But they're asking us to apply for these loans because, as you see, rent is covered. So you may be asked by your landlord to apply for the Paycheck Protection Program to get money so you can pay them. They may not be asking you to pay them right now, but they would like for you to get, because this is literally going to be called free money, believe it or not. And this money will be, we'll get to that in just a minute. Okay, so the loan proceeds from this can be for payroll cost, mortgage interest, rent, or utility cost. All payments are deferred for 6 months. Application start dates, small businesses and sole proprietorships. Tomorrow starts the application process, and Mr. Richard Pappas, you have probably already started seeing an uptick in that. And that's going to be, there are a lot of banks that have never done small business SBA loans, but now they're trying to apply to get into this game or this process. So this is all done through your local bank or local financial institution, not through the SBA directly. We're going to cover another loan that's going to be through the SBA directly. So they're both SBA loans, but one's done locally or through a financial institution, and one's done through the SBA direct. There are 2 application dates, and I just said the April 3rd one. The April 10th is for independent contractors, self-employed individuals, what you call the gig economy. That's the start date for you. Why they did different dates, I don't know. But they're very adamant that if you fall into this category, April 10th is your day that you can start applying. So it may be if you try to apply beforehand, the application may get discarded and you'll think you're in the system and you're not. Now, we talked about what's covered, and we said payroll costs, mortgage interest, rent, utilities. And to payroll cost, what's included in that? Payroll cost is salary, wages, commissions, tips, capped at $100 grand per employee. Employee benefits include vacation, Family Medical Leave Act, separation or dismissal allowances, for you terminate someone and pay them a 2-week salary, group health care cost, retirement benefit payments. So in other words, everything that you normally cover in payroll and write payroll checks for and deduct, or you contribute as the employer to the benefits of the employees, all of this is covered. State and local tax assessed on compensation. That's the employee portion of, that's the withholdings we were talking about earlier. For sole proprietors or independent contractors, your payroll costs are going to be wages, commissions, income or net earnings from self-employment, capped at $100,000. So you still have that $100,000 cap. You'll just have to do a quick profit and loss calculation to show what you should be getting. And basically they'll take that divided by 12, they'll annualize whatever it is you give them, if not already annualized, and calculate 2 months worth. And that is going to be what the loan will be for. So the size of the loan, it's going to be, again, It'll be based on 2 months of average payroll cost with about a 25% kicker added on for increased payroll costs, because you'll be using prior year numbers, keep in mind, to get your annual number. And they allow you to add something in there to cover added or changes in cost. Excuse me. Okay, seasonal and new businesses will have different time periods to use for obvious reasons. How much is forgivable? And this is the thing I was talking about. It is 100% forgivable. So you're going to be allowed to pay your employees over a 2-month period, and more or less it's going to be all reimbursed to you in one way or another. Monies will also be, but you have to use it for the categories, and those categories again are these categories here. Monies will also be owed if your number of staff and payroll levels are not maintained. So if you borrow this money and you use it to cover payroll, but then you cut your staff, or you use it for, you don't want to use it for this, you use it for something else, that is not going to be allowable, and you'll be having to pay this back. So it will not be forgiven. The U.S. Treasury expects that approximately 25% of the monies taken under this Paycheck Protection Program will be used for other items and therefore have to be paid back. Now, this is something coming that on this next item here that I can't find anything different, but on the U.S. Treasury website, it was a 0.5% fixed rate loan. That sounds almost too good to be true. I've seen it maxes out it's capped at 4%. So, 4%, 0 to really it's no interest to 4%. It's still a pretty good rate for these types of loans. And that's only if you're having to pay it back. If you don't have to pay it back, then you don't even have to worry about this. But that was what was on one of their flyers that I have. And so I went with it, but it says a 0.5% interest rate and the term no longer than 2 years. Well, something else I have that usually is pretty credible says 4% with 10-year term. So what that tells me is there's still, maybe it went from one to another. I don't know. So just be aware that those are the boundaries that we're dealing with. Here's something else. No collateral is required. For this payroll, the payroll or Paycheck Protection Program loan, you have no loan, no collateral, and no personal guarantees. So more or less, you're just saying, Miss Government, I want my money. It's kind of like I want my MTV, and you're supposed to be able to get it until the money runs out. And that's the key. If the money runs out, you don't have it. So they're encouraging everybody that's going to apply with those in those time frames that we discussed, that we had a little while ago. Okay, the second loan package is the economic injury disaster loan. And this one kind of came out really it came out in the same package, but in the CARES Act, but this is done directly through SBA. And this is called an economic injury disaster loan. Usually you can get disaster loans when you have hurricanes, tornadoes, whenever there's a disaster declared, and a national disaster or a state disaster is declared. But this has been considered a disaster because it's an economic disaster. So there is a loan that's available to you, and more or less, the dollar amounts vary, but it also gives you a quick $10,000 emergency grant of cash advance. I don't mean like you can click on your computer and it prints it, but that speeds up the process. They're going to have a lot of stuff to go through. So if you want the $10,000 advance on this EIDL loan or EIDL package, then tell them that in the application, and it's you're supposed to be paid just based on signing the application. Again, I haven't seen this work yet, and they're still trying to get everything fixed or finalized, but that's my understanding. The grant of $10,000 can be used for the same things that we're kind of been going over: paid leave, maintaining payroll. One thing we haven't talked about are increased cost for supply chain materials. Manufacturers may have seen an uptick in cost for their materials that they use. That increase in cost can be covered by this emergency loan. And you can also use it for other loan payments that you're required to do, or that you're required to use and keep paid. So that's some money that's available there for this, and you can go the 10,000 emergency grant, or you can continue doing the disaster loan application and get your money then, but it'll be a little bit longer than just the 10,000 emergency grant, based on what they say. EIDLs can be approved based solely on the applicant's credit score. If they're less than 200,000, they can be approved without a personal guarantee. So you're looking at a lot of money here that's going to be loaned to businesses without personal guarantees, without collateral. And, it should be it's providing everybody stimulus to keep things going. And, we just hope that we start seeing that impact in the next few weeks. Okay, let's go on now to a few other items. The business tax provisions, just real quickly. You get retention credits for keeping employees. Now, that's a long calculation, and when I was doing this, I really didn't take the time to figure out how this calculation works. But I do know that you don't get this credit if you're taking the free money. So that may be something that you want to look at further before you take any of the paycheck loans or the economic disaster loans. Eligible employers may defer payments of employers' portion of payroll taxes. And this is what we were talking about earlier, is that the monies that you're now allowed to use as working capital that used to be considered trust monies that were the employees, you're now, of course, like I said, allowed to use that for working capital, but you're not having to pay it back until half of it by the end of 2021, and then the next half by 2022. So you're really getting 2.5 years to pay this back on monies you take out of an employee's check over the next 8-10 weeks. So I'm really surprised they're letting everybody do that for the obvious reasons, but they had to find quick money somewhere, and this was the best way they could come up with it. They're also made modifications on net operating leases. If you, for some of you, you may know that when the the Job Act's law was put into place back in December of 17, and it started mostly in 18 and 19, net operating losses, there was a big drastic change on how you could do those. They've modified it, basically going back to the old way to give you more ability to take NOLs to help cover your tax cost. And there's also, there is now currently in place a limit on your business interest deductions, where they've modified that as well. Unemployment benefits have been expanded, and this is something that I thought they had taken out of the bill, but apparently it's still in it. And that is that the federal government has agreed to kick in $600 per week for everybody that applies for unemployment, besides the state benefits that they would be getting. So if they get $250 state benefits, their check's going to be $850 a week. And it's under the pandemic unemployment compensation category. It's just a flat $600 for everybody and anybody that takes unemployment. And that's one of the reasons why you've seen such a big uptick in filings of unemployment, because of the $600 cash. The period for receiving unemployment for employees that are out of work has gone from, I think, 13 weeks to now 26 weeks for receiving benefits. And here's something also, those that are self-employed or sole proprietors, you really can't file unemployment because you've never, that's not how you're set up corporate wise, or you're structured. Now you can. So if you can prove you've had a significant downtick in your business, you're able to file for self-employment as well. Okay, that was it in a very quick, I said it would be about 40 minutes, and Mr. Russell, I think I hit it. I now see that we've got a few questions, and I will try to answer all that I can. Let's see, there's some requirements. Are the same requirements for the grant for EIDL, such as need to keep payroll expenses at least 75%? I don't know that. I will find that out, and I will reply later. Can you get the payroll credits and do the EIDL loan for supply chain needs? Supply chain needs are only going to be available through the economic income disaster loan, not through the Paycheck Protection Program, because that sounds like starting to hide from the mafia, the Paycheck Protection Program. That's only for payroll, and you're keeping the lights on and the doors open. It's not for the materials. And let's see, there's another one. Can you file for unemployment with reduced hours as well and receive the improved benefits? Probably not, because you're not unemployed. You can probably file for unemployment. The question is, can you file for unemployment with reduced hours from your employer? And that answer is no. You're either unemployed or you're not, or you're employed. And they're going to probably, don't know if they're going to require you to go through the Family Medical Leave Act questionnaire, which you may, but most people that are getting laid off now are not getting laid off because they have a sick person or they're sick. It's because of the business or lack thereof. So that's where the employment. So for some people, and they said this they said this earlier on, and that's why they tried to get it out. It's more profitable for someone to be unemployed than to be employed. And you get it for 26 weeks. So something to think about. Is the $10,000 emergency advance subject to applicant's credit score like the EIDL is? I don't think so. It may be, but this is just, from what I understand, all you're signing the application saying I need the emergency grant, and that's done before they even really process your application or go down into the checking out all the details. Employer payroll taxes are not included in the portion of the PPP loan that is forgiven. Is that correct? That's correct. You're just talking the employee portion. And did not realize self-employment could file. My company is incorporated. It's a very small business. So can I still file? I think so. I mean, I don't know. They're wanting to know if you're self-employed and your business has basically deteriorated to a little bit. You still have some things coming in, but you are, not running like you were. You probably can, but you have to report money that you're earning every week or whenever it is. You have to give the Employment Security Commission an update on what are you making any money, because they reduce your benefits from that. So I think you can still continue to run your business, and as your business starts improving, what will happen is they will start reducing your unemployment benefits to compensate for the increased business. Is there provision on the state site for reduced hours for benefits? I do not know that. I am sorry. I am the only employee. That was okay. That was real quick. I know a lot of them said I don't know, because I don't. Those that I didn't know, I will find out, and I will try to get back to you in the next few days. But probably by then you will have already learned the answer, because it's amazing what you can find now. But make sure you're doing things, you're using credible information and not Facebook post. So please go to the source when you're trying to check out information to make sure if you can do it or not. Bill, I don't know if there's anything else that you've gotten or if there's anything else I can help with. But I think that kind of covers what I wanted to cover. I hope that this helps. You know, it's one of these things where you kind of, going back a few years when they redid the North Carolina, they were wanting to revamp the entire North Carolina tax system. And I was part of that commission. And one of the senators that was Dr. Ruscio out of Matthews, he, you know, we would ask him questions about things and he'd say, I don't know. This is going to be flying the plane and we fix things as they occur. So, you know, some of this is going to be, the plane's going to be in the air, and if problems arise, hopefully they can, you know, if the wing falls off, hopefully they can fix it. But it's not going to be perfect, but I think they've done a great job. Believe it or not, I do think the government has done a good job on trying to provide us things as quickly as possible. And, you know, just remember that, you know, in closing, I guess, just remember that be nice to everybody. It's nobody's fault that we're in this, and let's move forward and let's get businesses up and running again and keep going like we were a few months ago. So
hey, you bring up an excellent point. The CARE Act and everything is continuing to change. We had Business Works is scheduled for next Tuesday at noon. It was going to be a professional development program. We have bumped that. Dale Gilmore is going to be up, and he is going to be talking about the CARES Act and the small business checklist. It continues to evolve every day. So we're going to continue to get out that information. So Business Works this coming Tuesday will again be a Zoom presentation and will be emailed to put on social media, and we'll send out invitations to our membership about that. But that's going to be Dale Gilmore. We're not forgetting about professional development. We have Dan Houston on tap, who is a John Maxwell trainer. He is going to be speaking later on this coming month, and we've got that in the tap. So again, we're going to be getting out information. We're going to put this whole presentation today, which has been recorded. We're going to put it onto the website and also email to our membership and placed on social media with the documents that Jay referenced, the downloads. And so all of that information will be available. The Chamber has also been busy in advocacy and weighing in on some healthcare issues. We've been very aggressive. Jeff Tart, who is our public policy chair, has been working with our federal officials to make some of these respirators available. And again, we're going to be talking about what we're doing as a Chamber of Commerce on the healthcare front. So again, we're not just about small business assistance, we're about representing our businesses here and being very aggressive on that area. Again, thank everybody for joining today. I want to thank Jay Lesemann again for the presentation and the work that he put into this. As he was working on it, it continued to change over the last 72 hours. And so we tried to make this as current as possible. I want to thank Douglas Marion, who has been in here helping me with the Zoom technology, and thank him for taking his time. So again, thank everybody for being with us, and stay tuned, and we'll have another program up shortly. Thank you.